We're here with Scott Williams today, guitarist from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, going through his guitar picks. 330 Blues, Duane Eddy.
That was off of his first album, too. Going back to that album Mama had when I was growing up. From what I read in an interview, it was where Duane was trying to be B.B. King. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's just a cool blues thing, you know. And there's this one chord in there where he's going up to the C chord. He goes, and I mean, he just bears down on the arm and just shakes the living out of it pretty much. And I mean, I could still listen to that to this day, and the hair on my neck stands up. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's kind of just a slow, syrupy
a slow blues thing, and then there's a wailing saxophone about halfway through it, and 330 Blues, and it actually, I think, times out right at 3.5 minutes, mm-hmm. which for late 50s, that was a long song.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, yeah.
But that album, I mentioned that album, it was called Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel. And from what I understand, I mean, it was like, 11 or 12 instrumentals. From what I have read and heard, at any given time, you could hear 8 or 9 of them on the radio. There was no, well, there were hits, but back then, a lot of the stations would play an instrumental to lead up to the news break at the top of the hour or something like that. So he was getting a lot of airtime that way. So therefore, he was getting some hits mm-hmm. just because they needed something to fill up a couple of minutes leading up to airtime. Giving the DJ time to go to the bathroom, I guess. I'm not sure. But I mean, that album is still, that whole album is still one of my favorite overall albums. Mm-hmm. That one and, if I had to pick 2 Desert Island albums, there would be that one and the Sun Sessions by Elvis. Mm-hmm. That I would, if those were all I could have to listen to from now on, those 2 would keep me as happy as anything.
We're here with Scott Williams today, guitarist from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, going through his guitar picks. Norwegian Wood, The Beatles.
That, well, what can you say about John Lennon? I mean, incredible songwriter. I always had a preference for John, and definitely a soft spot for George Harrison. Mm-hmm. I guess because he was lead guitar player. I mean, he wasn't one of those outstanding guitar players, but he was very tasteful. With Norwegian Wood, I mean, what got me with it was mostly acoustic guitar. And it's in 3/4 time. I think he'd met Bob Dylan by the time he'd written Norwegian Wood. Mm-hmm. And Bob Dylan had an influence on him. And so he wrote that song there. And it's a cool song. I mean, I'll have to do it in D here. But, let's see here if I can get a little more volume here. But it's kind of just a simple, well, I say simple, but it took me years to figure out what he was doing. I just think that's so cool. I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. She showed me her room. Isn't it good? Norwegian Wood. She asked me to stay, and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around and I noticed there wasn't a chair. I sat on the rug, biding my time, drinking her wine. We talked until 2, and then she said, it's time to go to bed, and then the solo again. She told me she worked in the mornings and started to laugh. I told her I didn't and crawled off to sleep in the bed. Forgot half of it. And when I awoke, I was alone, desperate and alone. So I lit They were entering a folk phase, I guess, which I like a lot of the early Beatles, I would say from Revolver back to the earliest, or well, I should say from the earliest up to about their Revolver period. You know, they had an influence on, you know, not just music, but society in general.
We're here with Scott Williams today, guitarist from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, going through his guitar picks. Big Dwarf Rodeo, Reverend Horton Heat.
I've just gotten really into Horton, the Reverend, I should say, in the last 3 or 4 years. I seen him over at Ziggy's a couple of years ago. Great show. Big Dwarf Rodeo stands out in my mind because it's just his playing. He's sort of a cross between rockabilly and heavy metal. He comes out on one of these big Gretsch hollow body guitars, and he's got an upright bass man slapping and a drummer, and that's it. I guess some people would call him psychobilly. His stuff makes me want to play faster. Big Dwarf Rodeo is just, I mean, just the intro alone, and I'm really going to embarrass myself here, I'm sure, but just the intro itself, he's doing this kind of thing. Some weird lyrics too, you know. But I mean, but he does some really fast stuff. He's one of those guys that I found an interview, and he was talking about he had taken music theory, and I think that really helped his play because he throws in some of those what I call off chords, not your average everyday run of the mill chords. He'll throw in some. And he makes it look so effortless. I hate guys like that, you know. Don't even break a sweat, and they're just rocking the house, you know. Yeah, you got to find a good middle ground between technical proficiency and keeping the soul in it. You know, you get an idea in your head and think, okay, I'd like to be able to play that. And you got to be able to transfer it to your fingers, but it's got to go through your soul to get to it.
We're here with Scott Williams today, guitarist from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, going through his guitar picks. Built for Speed, the Stray Cats, Brian Setzer, lead guitarist.
Yeah, the Stray Cats catalog, again, their first couple albums in particular. Setzer's only like 4 or 5 years older than I am. Light years ahead of me in guitar playing. Well, I remember when they first came out, at that time, I mean, you know, it was right after disco. For those of you on the radio, I just rolled my eyes when I said that. And then there was New Wave, which I enjoyed because it was not disco. In the late 70s, early 80s, disco was pretty much gone. You had New Wave, and then you had the urban cowboy thing, which was almost as bad as disco. But then along comes, here I am, playing along with my mama's Duane Eddy album and Buddy Holly album, and then here come the Stray Cats doing the same kind of thing. And I'm thinking, finally, something new to sink my teeth into. And it was cool. It was great. For a kid that was like, 21, 22 years old, I mean, he was just fantastic. Built for Speed, Rock This Town, He was going back to the roots of rock and roll too, and I mean, Built for Speed pretty much all the way through just had this cool lick going. Here I come in my 57, and I can't do it and sing it at the same time. I've never tried to do that song actually. That one and Stray Cat Strut. I mean, that is.
Oh man, yeah.
That has got the coolest. I mean, just. I think he got that from 16 Tons myself. He'd been listening to Tennessee Ernie Ford and says, I'm going to write a song.
There you go.